Discovery Channel. Satisfacer la curiosidad del espectador por conocer el mundo en que vivimos y hacerle sentir la emoción del descubrimiento.
Un concepto que se transformó especialmente para los niños. Y se hizo interactivo para ofrecerles un canal que es casi un juguete para ellos. Discovery Kids.
Que se une a la BBC para abarcar con una programación extraordinaria aspectos nuevos de nosotros y de nuestras vidas, como nuestra relación con los animales, en un canal que es todo y solo sobre ellos, Animal Planet.
O un canal que es como un canto al hombre y a la experiencia humana, en todos los tiempos, en todas las culturas. People and Arts.
Todo lo que satisface su instinto natural de saber, de conocer, de comprender. Con toda la emoción y el disfrute que le proporciona el hacerlo, está a su alcance en 4 canales diferentes que le ofrece Discovery Networks. Si no los tiene, llame a su cable operador y pídalos.
When you're in the heat of your addiction, the drug takes over, it controls your life.
Addiction is the single most preventable cause of premature death in the United States.
Neither you nor I nor any scientist can predict who's going to become addicted.
Alcohol, smoking, gambling, even the internet can grab hold of your life.
The booze and the pills had become my best friends.
Now scientists are probing our brains to find out exactly where and why addiction occurs.
As long as you're high, that's the only thing that counts.
And they're hot on the trail of the genes that may lead to addiction, and a vaccine that may someday make us immune. I'm Kat Carney. Join us as we take an up-close and personal look at the often devastating problem of addiction. It begins with something pleasurable. A drink, a cigarette. If we try to stop, we suffer cravings and withdrawal symptoms that in the worst case can even kill. We continue to satisfy our addiction even though it destroys our health, our pocketbooks, sometimes our very lives. When we think of addiction, we usually picture illegal drugs. But most of our addictions are everyday. 50 million Americans addicted to cigarettes, 11 million to gambling, and 14 million to the perilous pleasure of alcohol.
And I'm going to line these first 2 electrodes up to that line that I just drew on your forehead, okay?
Today, I'm going to get drunk in the name of science. It's to show the first step in addiction, how a drug like alcohol creates pleasure.
The EEG machine works a lot like your personal stereo system. It acts as a big amplifier. And the antenna that you have on the back of your stereo system is actually like those little wires that we attach to Kat's head. And all we're doing is amplifying the very tiny electrical signals that her brain was putting out.
These wires carry the signals from my brain to a computer outside the drinking room. Now I'm ready for my first cup of wine.
Keep sipping.
Try to sip about every 30 seconds.
My brainwave activity is indicated by the shifting colors on the readout. And after only 1 drink, Professor Lucas sees a significant change. He looks for 3 different kinds of brainwaves. Beta waves reveal that I'm feeling alert and stimulated. Alpha waves show that I'm feeling relaxed or high. And finally, theta waves, which show that I'm becoming sleepy.
Kat, how are you feeling right now?
I feel good.
Okay.
I mean, I feel very mellow, very comfortable. I don't necessarily feel like I've been drinking, but I do feel good. I do feel more mellow than I did before I started drinking.
Even though I don't yet feel drunk, The fact that my brainwaves have changed so quickly shows Professor Lucas that I'm not used to drinking very much.
We can pretty much say that Kat is not a heavy drinker. She does not have a lot of what we'd call tolerance. A single glass of wine has pretty much changed her brainwave activity. It's changed her behavioral state.
Cup number 2.
I've just finished my second cup of wine.
Okay, you can just relax for us for a second now.
Shall we try 3?
And this is cup number 3.
How floating do you feel right now?
With a joystick, I report on my mood. I'm definitely floating, and I can say I'm feeling pretty good. Okay, I'm feeling a little drunk.
She has zero anxiety right now.
Lucas can see it in my brainwaves. They are dominated by alpha and beta waves. That means I'm feeling the first step of addiction. I'm feeling pleasure.
Kat was able to achieve this state after only 3 glasses of wine. Now, some people may think that's a lot of wine, but in fact, for some people, it's not very much wine at all. And it's not uncommon for people to consume an entire bottle of wine at dinner and still not feel anywhere near as intoxicated as Kat does at this point. Okay, how do you feel?
I don't feel too bad.
Good. How dizzy do you feel right now?
I don't feel dizzy at all.
You don't?
No, a little lightheaded, but I don't feel dizzy.
Good.
The pleasure I'm feeling comes from a flood of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. If I were to continue drinking on a regular basis, my brain would adapt to this alcohol-laden environment. It would cut back on its own production and come to depend on the daily supply of alcohol to produce normal levels of dopamine. I would have what we call an addiction. Dot McAdams is a recovering alcoholic.
I think it was a long time into my drinking before I actually felt I didn't have any control. I would think every once in a while that I would maybe not drink this evening, and I would go for an hour or 2 maybe, but all I could think of was that drink, because drinking meant I didn't have to face emotions, I didn't have to deal with situations, I could just escape.
Soon, alcohol wasn't enough, and she mixed her drinks with prescription drugs.
I drank my pills with my booze. That's how I swallowed them, with 80 proof scotch or whiskey or whatever bottle came out of the cabinet.
Dot's years of heavy drinking and drug use took a serious toll on her body. In 1983, a doctor took one look at her and admitted her to detox.
When I came into treatment, I was scared. I was really scared. Fear, because deep down inside I knew that I was going to be giving up my best friend. And it may sound funny to say that, but the booze and the pills had become my best friends.
But these are friends that can kill. A longtime alcoholic who suddenly stops drinking can develop extreme anxiety, fever, frightening hallucinations, uncontrollable shaking, and tremors. It's called delirium tremens, or DTs. Those are just some of the milder symptoms. More severe effects, like seizures and fluctuating blood pressure, can kill. But a detox program aims to avoid all of these dangerous symptoms.
The detox process can be done in a couple of days, and it can be done very safely and very efficiently so patients are not uncomfortable.
I was just so focused on the emotional stuff, and the medication that they gave me took care of the physical stuff, that it really wasn't difficult to be there.
It only takes about 48 hours to be rid of the physical addiction and withdrawal symptoms. But that doesn't mean you're cured. It can take a lifetime to overcome the psychological addiction. Individual counseling and organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous help build self-esteem, confidence, and friendships once found only in the bottle.
I had already given up all the narcotics and most of the pills.
I didn't want to grow up an alcoholic.
He is the problem himself.
AA's principles about living a day at a time, putting first things first, keeping things simple, are all real life advice for people who are learning how to recover.
hard to change the things I can.
Research has shown success rates of over 80% for people in long-term recovery programs. Because of her treatment and continued therapy, Dot McAdams has not had a drink in over 20 years.
Because of treatment, I know that a drink or a drug doesn't have to be the answer to everything. Thanks to my treatment experience, I've been able to reclaim my identity, my self-esteem. The identity I tried so hard to bury in a bottle of booze and a bottle of pills. Thanks to my treatment experience, I have a real awareness, a keen awareness of the importance of life, and a deep reverence for the quality of it. And maybe most important of all, because of my treatment experience, I'm alive to talk about it.
Ronald Bianchi is a jazz musician. Though he spent most of his nights in bars, only recently, when he quit his day job as a school teacher, did his drinking get out of control.
At first I thought I could just stop any time, but when I started seeing that I couldn't really, I just didn't know where to turn.
For Ronald, it was the cravings, the nagging urge that kept him drinking. A visual cue, a smell, or even a memory can activate the desire. Overcoming cravings is often the key to overcoming addiction. Today, Ronald is here at the Providence, Rhode Island VA Medical Center. He's part of a study to see if this small pill called naltrexone may alleviate his desire for alcohol.
Naltrexone can help people deal with some of those cravings. It also helps people if they do have a slip. Naltrexone seems to reduce the pleasure of drinking alcohol.
When we drink, alcohol enters our bloodstream and is carried to the brain. It attaches to receptors in the opioid system that control pain and pleasure. Alcohol stimulates the pleasure system. That's why we like it so much. The drug may work by blocking the opioid receptors. The result, we do not get the same kick from alcohol. It breaks the addiction at the most basic level, pleasure. Ronald has been taking 2 pills a day for 3 months.
Have you had any craving?
I don't feel any differently, except better for not drinking the alcohol.
Do you think the medication helped you?
I would have to take a layman's answer and say yes, because why? How did it happen all of a sudden? You know, but since it's a coincidence, since I started taking the medication, I don't have any cravings. But I confess, to watch the playoffs, I did have 2 small beers, but it wasn't a compulsive thing. It was next day I felt fine. I didn't feel any compulsive. Just to drink again or have another beer.
No cravings.
No cravings at all. It's ever since I started coming here.
Naltrexone has been used to treat heroin addicts for 20 years. Just recently, it was approved by the FDA for alcoholism. But experts caution that these pills will never replace therapy.
There's no such thing as a magic pill that'll entirely help. When people come into treatment with addiction, they have a whole host of problems. They have a whole host of psychosocial problems. Often they have family problems, marital problems, legal problems, and no pill's going to help with that. And people need counseling and education to really help them put their lives back together.
But it's like a return to paradise, whatever, or normalcy, whatever the expression is. I feel like myself again. I feel like I practice every day. I'm playing and I'm having fun with friends and
Addictive drinking can cause many physical problems, but the liver is in particular danger. Let's learn how. Hi,
Marcia.
Hey, Kat, how you doing?
I'm good. I think I'm looking at some livers here, but this one doesn't look too healthy.
This is a very unhealthy liver. This liver has cirrhosis.
So what happens to the liver when it has to process too much alcohol?
Well, you know, your liver is your main chemical factory in your body. It's the area in your body that everything you eat, everything you drink goes through that, and it detoxifies or processes what goes through. So when you drink a glass of alcohol, it's going to go to the liver.
Now, how much do you have to drink before cirrhosis sets in?
Well, you know, that's a difficult question because some people can drink just maybe what we would consider moderate amounts and become cirrhotic, and other people are drinking very large amounts and become cirrhotic. There's sort of an individual difference, but I think daily drinking with, 3 or 4 glasses a day, 5 glasses a day could put you at risk.
Now, where is the cirrhosis on here? What does it look like?
Well, the cirrhosis is really this knobbiness that you see in the liver. And if we take a normal piece of liver, you see how smooth the surface is right here?
Big difference.
Big difference. And this is due to the fact that many liver cells have died and we've gotten scar tissue, and the scar tissue is pulling down on that liver, making it look very knobby.
Alcohol is toxic. It eventually destroys the liver cells.
The final end stage would be when your liver cells are not working at all, and then you cannot live because you need to be able to detoxify all these things that come through your body.
Cirrhosis strikes 3 million people each year in the United States.
There's a saying in here that you weren't arrested, you were rescued. And fortunately, in my instance, I was rescued. If it wasn't for my incarceration, I'd still be doing the hateful, deceitful, manipulative things I did out there in order to get my fix.
Danny Megna is living proof that addictions can sometimes so overpower people that they lose control over their use of a substance despite the terrible consequences. In Danny's case, he ended up forging checks to support a $300 a day heroin addiction until he landed in prison. It's estimated that 85% of all incarcerated people have committed crimes because of addiction.
When you're in the heat of your addiction, the drug takes over, it controls your life. You know, for someone with education and someone with some halfway decent background to look back and say, I let a $10 bag of a white powdery substance take complete control of my life, it's heart-wrenching.
It's mind-boggling that a drug can take such control over somebody's life, as it did to Danny, until you see just what drugs do in the brain. These primates, studied by Bertha Madras of Harvard Medical School's Department of Psychiatry, will show just where addictive drugs go in the brain. Madras is trying to pinpoint exactly where cocaine does its dirty work. Her experiment will use this frozen monkey brain weighing less than half a pound. It comes from a rhesus monkey that died of natural causes. A razor-sharp blade slices paper-thin cross-sections of brain tissue, which quickly melt onto room-temperature slides. The brain slices get a bath of cocaine molecules, each tagged with a radioactive tracer. Finally, they are exposed to X-ray film for an entire month. The radioactivity appears on the X-ray and reveals precisely where in the brain cocaine is absorbed. This is your brain on drugs.
The first step in understanding how an addiction begins is to find out where the drug goes in the brain. The areas that contain the most radioactivity stain the film the darkest. These red areas are the ones that contain very dense amounts of cocaine. These areas also are the richest areas in the brain of dopamine. And clearly, it goes to where dopamine is found.
Dopamine is one of the chemical communicators between nerve cells. When our brain releases dopamine, it is often sending a message of pleasure. Cocaine is a chemical imposter of dopamine. It lodges in dopamine receptors, keeping the neurotransmitter from being reabsorbed. The excess dopamine floods the synapses. The sensation is one of pleasure. Madras hopes that her understanding of what happens in the brain will lead to the development of pharmaceuticals that can block the effects of addiction. Understanding addiction can't come soon enough for Danny Megna. Once he's released from prison, temptation is waiting.
I'm scared to death every day that I'm going to be out there because I know that I had put heroin above everything before. Family, friends, money, job, nothing mattered. And if I go out there again, once that substance injects into my veins the first time, that's my one true love. And it's got to change. It's got to change or I'm coming right back here.
Smoking cigarettes is the #1 addiction in the United States. Many experts say the cigarette is nothing more than a nicotine delivery system. When a person takes a puff, nicotine is absorbed so quickly it reaches the brain in only 10 seconds. Like cocaine and heroin, nicotine is an imposter for one of the brain's neurotransmitters. It floods the system, giving a quick, intense feeling of pleasure. While nicotine causes the addiction, other components of cigarettes cause the health problems. Smokers inhale over 4,000 chemicals, including 43 potentially cancer-causing substances, in order to get their fix. The result is more deaths than AIDS, motor vehicle accidents, homicide, and suicide combined. And yet 25% of Americans continue to smoke. That's because nicotine is just as addictive as heroin or cocaine.
Do you have any allergies to any medication, dear?
Lee Costa wakes up with a severe burning pain in her chest.
And you said you take nitro, right? Nitro booster?
She thinks she's having a heart attack. A call to 911 and she is rushed to the hospital.
I was scared. I was really scared. Going to the hospital, having to stay overnight, not knowing what was wrong. Until Rosa came in and asked me. I hadn't even thought about not smoking.
Hi, how are you today?
Lee isn't having a heart attack, but smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day has raised her blood pressure, has made her heart work harder, and is now giving her chest pains. It may be one of the most terrifying moments in Lee's life, and her clinicians are about to prey upon her fears. As part of a study, they will see if they can use this opportunity to help Lee quit smoking.
And it's a very good moment for us to approach them during that long period of time between tests and x-rays and exams to say, now that life has got your attention, let's talk about your smoking. Where are you at? And we take a very gentle approach because they're already scared, so we don't need to scare them anymore. Try and flesh out what's important to them, where their priorities are at, what their experience has been with quitting smoking, and to hopefully move them a little bit towards getting ready to really quit.
When I first approached Lee, she didn't want to quit, she didn't want to hear anything about quitting smoking. I think that after we talked about the pros and cons, she had some time to let it sit and think about it. She went home, and a couple of weeks later she called me and said, Rosa, can you help me?
Rosa helped Lee with counseling and free nicotine replacement therapies like patches and gum. It's likely her chest pains will not return because after 20 years of smoking, Lee has finally quit. This Rhode Island hospital program is working.
We expected those quit rates about 6 to 14%. And overall, right now, we're getting approximately 25% of our people quitting smoking, which is tremendous. We're really excited about this as a possibility and a new avenue for approaching people about smoking.
Now, we know that smoking causes damage to lungs, but what exactly does smoking do to our lung tissue? Marcia, I'm looking at, I guess, 3 different lungs here, and only one of them looks healthy.
Well, you got it. This is a healthy lung. You can see the color. It's kind of a light gray tan, completely normal looking.
Wow, what is this over here?
This is one of the most common types of lung tumors that we see in people who smoke. It's actually invading into the blood vessels and into the lymph nodes as well as into the lung. And this patient died from this tumor. And this very common tumor is called squamous cell carcinoma of the lung and very common in smokers. Then we go over to this awful looking piece, and you can see all of this pigment here, which is not only from breathing our air, but from smoking cigarettes.
So are these the blood vessels right here?
Yes, they are, and you know, this lung right around the blood vessels is very interesting. Let me take you over to the microscope so we can take a look at it.
Okay.
First, Dr. Cohen shows me a healthy lung.
This is what the lung looks like under the microscope. And what you see are these multiple air sacs, one right after the other, one touching each other. And in between the air sacs are these teeny little red areas, and those represent the red blood cells that come in there. And when you take a deep breath and bring oxygen into your lung, those red cells pick up the oxygen, then go to the rest of the body and give off that oxygen so you can live and function.
Well, now, what does a lung that smokes look like?
Well, let me show you.
Well, I can't tell if I'm looking at one large air sac or no air sacs at all.
Very good. That's where lots of sacs used to be. What happens when you smoke is you kill the air sacs. You kill the cells that make up that air sac. And so what ends up happening is you have this expanded lung, but no air sacs. And so if you have no air sacs, you have no red blood cells. And if you have no red blood cells,
you have no oxygen.
You got it.
I'm ready to take my life back and not have cigarettes rule my life any longer. Bye. Good riddance.
Tonight is Quit Night at Leahy Clinic's Freedom from Smoking program. For the past 4 weeks, these nicotine addicts have been analyzing why and when they smoke and devising a strategy to combat the urge to smoke. I am witnessing their final goodbye to cigarettes.
There we go. Whew, this thing stinks. Does it bother you to be this close to it?
No, I've been a lot closer to more cigarettes in my life than just that one bucket. It doesn't bother me.
As most experts recommend, these quitters are going cold turkey. Within a few hours, they will experience severe withdrawal symptoms: depression, irritability, insomnia, and headaches.
Tell me about what's been hard.
So many people around me that do smoke.
Many here will use nicotine patches, gum, or nasal sprays to help fight the physical withdrawal symptoms.
Well, what makes you go one more day smoke-free and then another day smoke-free?
I want to know what my life is supposed to be without cigarettes. I want to know what my health is supposed to be. I want to know what my skin is supposed to look like. I want to know how I'm supposed to breathe, and I want to know what life is supposed to be without them.
These nicotine addicts face a tough road ahead. Less than 3% of smokers successfully kick the habit. But a formal support program like this can raise the odds to as high as 35%. Soon, some will no longer have cigarettes rule their lives.
We're non-smokers! Yay! Woo! This smells. Oh, I gotta get this down.
Imagine if you could get vaccinated for an addiction. We've made polio and smallpox things of the past. Perhaps one day an injection will make us immune to the addictive effects of alcohol or heroin. We would take a puff of a cigarette and feel nothing. And for Paul Hoyt, A vaccine would mean he would never have to fear cocaine.
You wake up every day wondering where you're going to get your next high or where you're going to get the money for your next high, and you know, every day is revolved just around that one little piece. You know, whatever else happens in the day doesn't matter as long as you're high. That's the only thing that counts.
Paul is about to enter the world of the future. He is about to become one of the first people to receive a vaccination against cocaine. Dr. Tom Costin of Yale University administers the injection.
We envision the vaccine being helpful to people who are committed to want to be abstinent already. And it's a vaccine that will help people if they use small amounts of cocaine from not feeling the high from the cocaine and not getting that triggering effect that they would get from a small amount, inducing their craving and desire for more cocaine.
The vaccine is made of a protein that stimulates the immune system to make cocaine antibodies. When cocaine enters the system, these antibodies mop up cocaine molecules to keep them from getting to the brain, thus blocking any high. It's the same way vaccines work for viruses and bacteria that cause disease. Today, Paul is one of only 34 people in the world to have antibodies to cocaine flowing through his bloodstream. It's extra help in his quest to stay clean.
It was just a confidence booster, you know, just helped me keep my esteem going, saying, all right, well, we could do this. We don't need to go out and get high. You know, that's what it was good for, just in case, you know, I had something to fall back on.
Researchers are also developing vaccines to fight other addictions. Next up, an injection against smoking. Being clean of his cocaine addiction has allowed Paul Hoyt to hold a steady job, buy a new car, and repair relationships with his family. He is proud to have played a part in paving the way for the future treatment of addicts.
It was helping other people and I got help, you know, so you pass it along, really. Now my life consists of, I have a nice car, I'm doing real good with my family. You know, they're just good now, they're better.
Addiction is tragic, but imagine if you passed your compulsive and dangerous habit onto your children. Scientists now believe that the tendency towards addiction is genetic. Tristan Darland, a scientist at Harvard University, is currently searching for the genes that lead to our worst habits. These are his zebrafish, commonly found in home aquariums. Instead of fish food, he is about to give them cocaine. He puts the equivalent of a human dose on one side of the fish tank. The fish goes for it. The next day, he puts a new disc in, this time without cocaine. Compulsively, the fish goes for the disc, hoping for a high. His conclusion, just like humans, zebrafish seem to like the kick that comes from cocaine.
So we found that the response of fish to cocaine is roughly equivalent to what's been reported for other animals, including humans. There's heightened arousal, they jump around more, they're more agitated, there's more aggression. In many respects, the fish is a good model for studying the effects of addictive drugs.
Tristan's zebrafish are ideal for genetic studies. He can raise large families in a limited amount of space. And because addiction is a primitive behavior, if he finds the genes responsible for addiction in fish, there's a good chance they are similar in humans. Darland raises families of both cocaine-addicted and cocaine-resistant fish. He is comparing the genes of the two families and feels he's close to identifying the genes for addiction.
The hope is, of course, that we're going to find several genes involved in drug addiction. We're going to use these genes as a screen for families so that we can find out in an early age potential addicts and help them before they get started.
And even if there were winnings, and there were winnings, I can't say that I didn't win. I never stopped. There was never enough.
I think I realized I had a problem when I realized I no longer had control. I no longer had a choice as to whether to buy a ticket and when to stop.
The temptation to gamble surrounds us in our everyday lives. Many of us can enjoy a trip to the casino, a day at the races, or an occasional lottery scratch ticket. But for 11 million Americans, the act of gambling is compulsive. Ed Talbot lost all of his money and his family because of his addiction to gambling. His bet of choice was greyhound racing.
The addiction is more the emotional, the excitement, the rush you get when you are gambling. 30 seconds, the race is over and done with, and for 30 seconds, you've got this rush of not knowing what's going to happen. I can remember the dog, what kennel he ran for, who the parents were, how the dog liked to run. I can't remember facts like that about my daughter's childhood. The last 2 or 3 years of my gambling, as I look back on it now, was marked by this: I cannot afford to stop. I'm in such a mess right now. The only way that I can ever straighten this out is to come up with a big hit that would take care of everything.
Unlike Ed, Jim Palmer didn't lose all of his money to compulsive gambling, but the problem still consumed his life. His addiction was to something very easy for us to find in our everyday lives: lottery scratch tickets.
It was like a quick fix. It was like a quick gamble. You go to the store, if you go for coffee or whatever, they're there.
Jim Palmer found that when he was going through a crisis or felt overwhelmed by life, he would buy the scratch cards to distract himself. Soon, he was unable to control how many he would buy.
It really scared me, the fact that I could go and have $100 in my pocket and say, well, I'm just going to buy a ticket or two, and it doesn't stop there. You know, then you buy 5 tickets, say, well, in that next set of 5, I got to buy those before somebody else buys them because I know the winning tickets in that. Before you know it, you've spent $100 and you had no control over what you were doing. I could see how people have lost their lives, their family, everything they own, because it's not a matter of choice. It gets to be, it's an addiction. It's something that just takes over you.
Gamblers have all the classic symptoms of addiction. The sufferer has intense cravings, and they will risk harm for their fix. And yet this addiction can happen without drinking, inhaling, or snorting a foreign chemical. So how does this addiction happen? You are about to enter the brain of a gambler. Dr. Elizabeth Matthew is experimenting with compulsive gamblers here at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston.
Nothing would be better than gambling right now.
She asks her subjects to listen to the sounds of casinos and racetracks. The urge to gamble is so strong that merely listening to these sounds creates a craving.
Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen.
Then she injects a radioactive tracer into the gambler's bloodstream. The tracer accumulates in the most active areas of the brain, the parts that stimulate a craving. And this SPECT scanner captures an image. This is your brain on gambling. To help interpret these images, Dr. Matthew also looks at a smoker's brain craving a cigarette. During a nicotine craving, the most activity is in the nucleus accumbens and limbic system. These are areas of the brain associated with basic instincts.
The best description of these regions would be primitive brain. It's present in lower animals, and it's also developed earliest in the development of a human brain.
In smokers, addiction involves the primitive part of the brain. In gamblers, it's the neocortex, the most recently evolved part of the brain. It's associated with conscious control. And this finding holds important clues for the best ways to treat compulsive gamblers.
Since the brain regions that appear to be most involved in craving in gamblers is in the neocortex, which is under volitional control, it's likely that behavioral therapies may be more effective than drug therapies.
Based on her studies, Dr. Matthew believes that gamblers may have more conscious control of their habit than other addicts, and that therapy which focuses on conscious decisions may offer the best hope for treatment. Today, Jim Palmer gets help for his gambling at the Kit Clark Senior Center. Here, counselor Georgia Neal provides behavioral therapy which focuses on concrete strategies to avoid gambling. She also provides psychodynamic therapy, which helps Jim become aware of the unconscious thoughts that accompany his gambling. A combination of the two psychotherapies are helping Jim.
I think Jim is someone who has a lot of wisdom in himself. So in some ways it was helping him find his own solutions.
It freed me just being able to open up to somebody and somehow gaining control back.
Jim struggles with his addiction and has to fight the urge to buy a scratch ticket when life becomes overwhelming.
I'll try and break my isolation by getting out. I'm finding I'm spending a lot more time with friends and trying to be more social that way. And I spend a lot of time walking with my dog. And it gets me out, it gets me out, and it's good for my heart, so just to walk.
Ed Talbot also sought help. He chose Gamblers Anonymous as a group therapy program similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. With their help, Ed hasn't been to the racetrack in over 23 years. These days, he works as Chief of Staff at the Bristol County Office of Corrections in Massachusetts.
My work in the prison system today serves as a reminder on a daily basis that if I hadn't made changes in my life, I would probably be behind bars.
We can become addicted to almost anything that gives us pleasure and excitement. It could be exercise, which may start off innocently, but repeated use causes a chain in our brain chemistry which makes us crave more. It could be shopping, and soon we are willing to risk our families and our jobs to satisfy our urge. It could even be sex. When the behavior is uncontrollable and causes harm in our lives, it crosses the line into an addiction. The gateway to one of the newest addictions can be found in just about any home or office. It's a computer. Marissa Hecht-Orzak discovered computer addiction in herself 5 years ago when she became overwhelmed with work and turned to the computer game Solitaire.
Gradually, I found that I was just playing solitaire. I was beginning to get irritable, lose sleep. I probably missed a deadline or two, and I found that this was something that I was not in control of.
Orzak is not just an addict, she's an addiction expert. After 2 months, she realized that her computer behavior was compulsive. Soon, she discovered other cyber addicts and started the Computer Addiction Services program at McLean Hospital. One of Orzak's clients spent most of his waking hours on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I would just be on the computer, and it was easy to escape into. I wouldn't have to do anything else. I would just be on the computer all the time, and I didn't have to talk to anybody or anything. I didn't have to reach out to anybody. It would frustrate me. It would take away time that I would be doing something else. It would suck because I would be doing work, and then all of a sudden I would get into the pornography, and it's like, and I plan to watch TV or something or do something else, and I can't because I was on the pornography all the time.
Treating cyber addiction offers an unusual problem. Most addictions, from drugs to gambling, are treated by going cold turkey. But with a computer in almost every home and office, abstinence is nearly impossible.
So I treat them similarly to an eating disorder, where people have to learn how to control their eating in order to survive.
Orzak recommends making a strict schedule of computer use and sticking to it, even using an alarm clock to remind you to stop. Orzak's client is not entirely free of his internet addiction, but manages to do other things in his life thanks to her help.
I'm starting to get used to being with people more, especially at the gym, and it's getting a little bit better.
Orzak translated her love of solitaire and playing cards into a non-computer activity. Now she collects antique cards with her husband.
And we've found some very, very interesting cards. And I find that much more pleasurable than spending hours on solitaire on the computer.
I love the internet, so much so that I can spend 4 or 5 hours a day downloading emails, surfing the net, going into chat rooms. I'm starting to think that maybe I'm in the early stages of cyber addiction, which is why I'm here to meet Ted Benton, who has a unique way to help people overcome their addictions. Come on. Hypnotherapy. Ted? Hi.
How you doing? Welcome to Winchester Hospital.
Thank you.
It's good to see you.
You too.
Good to see you.
Ted Benton is about to hypnotize me. Many of his patients have addictions to cigarettes and alcohol. Let's see if his hypnotherapy will work on cyber addiction.
Do you get a lot of cyber addicts in here?
Not really.
Am I your first?
You're the first.
Oh, okay.
I was looking forward to this. I was able to put a therapy together for you this week.
Do I have to watch you like swing a pendulum in front of me?
No. Very few people use that. Most people today, modern hypnotherapists, use their voice to help the patient become relaxed.
All right, well, let's get going before I chicken out.
Now, to help you relax a bit, I'd like you to take a moderately deep breath and fill your lungs up. And hold that to your count of 5. Kat, I'd like you to use your imagination now, and I'd like you to visualize or see yourself outside on a starry night someplace. And as you do,
concentrating on these imaginary stars and listening to his voice quickly had me in a deep state of relaxation. It's an altered state of consciousness, similar to that moment right when we're falling asleep or waking up. Hypnotherapists believe that in this relaxed state, we're prone to suggestion and we can be induced to make positive changes in our life.
When a hypnotherapist works with you, he has a conversation with your unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is the feeling, emotional mind, and that's where her feelings and the beginnings of her addictions lie. Number 1, Kat, you can control your habit. It does not control you.
Hypnosis isn't for skeptics. For it to work, you have to believe it's going to work.
She's going to have a new set of feelings about working on the internet because of the suggestions, direct and indirect, that I gave her unconscious mind. Very, very sensitive about what you're doing. Feel yourself coming up now. 2, really relaxed. 3, your mind is crystal clear. 4, feeling really great now. And 5, you can open your eyes now and enjoy the wonderful relaxation. Well, it's a very powerful way to help addictions, but the bottom line with hypnosis, with anything including addictions, is a strong desire to make a change, because all hypnosis is fundamentally self-hypnosis. So the more motivated you are when you come to the therapy, the more likely it is that the therapy is going to be successful.
Ted Benton has helped many people suffering from addiction.